So, imagine you live in a neighborhood where, like, 88% of the families with young kids literally cannot find an open spot in a local daycare.
Right, which is just staggering to even think about.
Yeah, it's not that it's just inconvenient or, a little pricey. We're talking about a mathematical impossibility
Oh, for sure.
where the demand for the service is 3 times higher than the actual supply. For most working parents in Texas right now, finding someone to watch their kids isn't the exception. It's basically a full-blown statistical crisis.
And that crisis,
Yeah.
it looks vastly different depending on the exact zip code you're sitting in.
Yeah.
We were actually reviewing audio from a meeting of Texas early childhood professionals from today, April 29th, 2026.
Huh.
And before the agenda even starts, they're just making small talk about the weather.
Right, like you do on any Zoom call.
Exactly.
Uh,
One person mentions this crisp, lovely 66-degree cold front they're enjoying, and then someone logging in from Brownsville describes their weather as hot and sweaty.
oh, wow.
Yeah, they literally called it soup.
That really stuck with me, actually, because that stark regional divide in the weather, it's kind of the perfect metaphor for the childcare landscape we're exploring today.
That's a great point.
What you experience, the resources your family can access, the quality of care for your kids, it depends entirely on the local climate of your specific region. So, welcome to our deep dive.
Glad to be here.
We're taking a magnifying glass to the deeply complex, often hidden, and honestly incredibly high-stakes reality of early childhood care.
To do that, we're unpacking a really comprehensive January 2026 executive summary. It's from the organization Children at Risk, and it's called Paving the Way to Quality.
And it's basically a forensic accounting report, right?
Yeah, exactly. It tracks how millions of quote-unquote quality improvement dollars are flowing through Texas's 28 local workforce development boards.
The LWDBs.
Right. We're decoding these financial choices to see what they reveal about a system that is currently operating in pure survival mode.
Which brings us back to that meeting audio. After the weather small talk, these professionals start discussing Jonathan Haidt's book, The Anxious Generation.
Oh, yeah. Really interesting discussion there.
Totally. They have this rich conversation about the absolute necessity of play, like how unstructured play is vital for human development, especially for young kids.
Right. It's how they learn to socialize and, regulate their emotions.
Exactly. But setting up the sources, I just couldn't ignore the central tension here. I mean, how on earth do we guarantee a safe, enriching place for children to play when the very system designed to give them that space is financially drowning?
It's a massive structural paradox.
Yeah.
You have educators pushing for the philosophical ideal of more play,
Right.
while the harsh statistical reality dictates that hundreds of thousands of children in Texas literally have no facility to go to. This introduces the concept of a childcare desert.
Okay, let's unpack this, because you might hear childcare desert and think it just means, I don't know, a rural area with no daycares for 50 miles.
Yeah, that's a common misconception.
But the definition they use is highly specific. A childcare desert is any area where the demand for licensed care is at least 3 times greater than the supply.
3 times.
Yeah. So for every 3 families desperate for a spot, only 1 can actually get in.
What's fascinating here is how the numbers from the September 2024 data in the report show the floor basically falling out.
The drop was huge.
It was. Texas lost nearly 75,000 childcare spots in just a single year.
That's just wild.
Because of that massive contraction, a staggering 88% of working families with children under 5 now live in one of these desert zones.
And translating those lost spots to real human impact, the report outlines that over 90,000 children are currently sitting on the Texas Workforce Commission, or TWC, waitlist.
Just waiting for a spot to open up.
Right. And worse, there's an estimated 485,000 eligible low-income children ages 0 to 5 who are completely unserved. They aren't even in the queue.
The legislative response to this is really telling, too. During the 89th legislative session, lawmakers recognized the bleeding and injected $100 million into the system, specifically aimed at these wait lists.
Which, on paper or in a press release, $100 million sounds like a massive expansion of services.
It sounds huge, but the report clearly notes this investment is only expected to maintain the current number of children served.
Which I really struggled with the math on this at first. I mean, how do you inject $100 million and not add a single new seat for those 485,000 unserved kids?
Well, you have to look at what's actually driving the cost of doing business. Inflation hits childcare centers across the board.
Like rent and stuff.
Rent for the building, liability insurance, classroom supplies, and crucially, staff wages. Plus, there's this aggressive state mandate pushing providers to participate in higher quality tiers, which we'll dissect in a minute. All of these factors skyrocket the overhead. So when the state pays a subsidy to cover a child's tuition, that reimbursement rate has to be higher just to cover baseline costs. That entire $100 million is immediately absorbed just keeping the lights on for the kids already in the system.
Okay, so think of the whole system as a boat that's taking on water fast. I mean, we just lost those 75,000 seats in a year.
Right.
That $100 million legislative investment. It isn't a bigger boat to fit all the kids on the wait list. It's essentially a very expensive bucket handed to the crew so they can bail water faster.
That is a painfully accurate way to put it.
We're spending millions just to make sure the boat doesn't sink today. So I want to follow the money here. How exactly are these 28 local boards legally allowed to spend their federal funds to plug these holes?
So the funding mechanism starts at the federal level with the Child Care Development Block Grant, or CCDBG. The TWC takes that federal money and distributes it to the 28 local workforce boards across Texas. But the federal government places really strict guardrails on the spending.
Right, they can't just spend it on whatever.
Exactly. Legally, local boards must spend no less than 70% on direct care. That's the actual tuition subsidies for families.
Got it.
Then, no less than 9% goes to quality initiatives, at least 3% specifically for infants and toddlers, and a maximum of 5% is capped for administrative costs.
But according to the report, Texas actually overperformed on the quality side in 2024. They spent roughly 19% on quality improvement, blowing past that 9% federal minimum.
They did.
But diving into the actual line items of that 19% reveals a massive, seismic shift in what quality actually means right now.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the breakdown of those quality dollars between 2023 and 2024 tells the whole story of this crisis.
Oh, absolutely.
In 2023, 81% of those funds went directly to Texas Rising Star supports.
That's the TRS program, right?
Yes. Texas Rising Star, or TRS, is the state's mandatory quality rating and improvement system. So 81% was funding things like curriculum overhauls, new playground equipment, developmental toys, and mentors coming in to observe classrooms.
Stuff that looks and feels like traditional quality improvement.
Exactly. But by 2024, that specific TRS support plummeted to 42%.
It essentially got cut in half in 12 months, and at the exact same time, spending in a vague category just labeled Other shot up from literally 0% in 2023 to 35% in 2024.
Yep.
Seeing a third of a state's quality budget suddenly shift to Other is just wild. What is Other?
Other is basically a euphemism for a workforce triage. The report explicitly details that local boards use this category to keep teachers from walking out the door.
Wait, like paying them directly?
We're talking about direct wage supplements and retention bonuses. The percentage of local boards handing out wage supplements jumped from 25% in 2023 to 54% in 2024. Wow. Over half the boards in the state suddenly diverted their quality money into direct financial life support for staff.
I have to challenge the premise of this spending, though. Is a one-off retention bonus actually quality improvement? Or is it just a desperate patch for a workforce that is inherently structurally underpaid?
That's the exact debate happening right now.
Because if you want real quality for a child, creating that psychological safety so they can actually engage in the play those professionals were talking about, that comes from consistency.
Yes, attachment is key.
It comes from seeing the same trusted face every morning, desperately bribing a teacher with a bonus so they don't quit and go make $3 more an hour managing a local retail store.
Yeah.
That doesn't seem like a long-term quality strategy.
The report echoes that exact sentiment, actually. It frames this shift clearly as a crisis response.
Yeah.
Local boards were forced into a corner by a major structural change, which was the expiration of the COVID-era American Rescue Plan Act, or ARPA funds.
Ah, the COVID money ran out.
Exactly. During the pandemic, historic levels of federal money flowed into these centers, allowing them to artificially inflate wages temporarily to keep staff.
Right.
When those ARPA funds evaporated, local boards looked at the reality on the ground. I mean, a center could have a newly funded, beautifully certified TRS classroom with the best Montessori toys.
But if there's no teacher?
Exactly. If the teacher leaves for a warehouse job, You have to close the room. You have zero capacity.
You literally can't have a quality classroom without a human being inside it.
So they pivoted the funding because stabilizing the workforce was the only way to keep the doors open. But these retention bonuses are tied to an even larger complicating factor. The state isn't just handing out money.
No, of course not.
They're demanding incredible levels of administrative proof from these providers to justify it.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because we have to talk about the 2021 law, House Bill 2607. Before this law, the Texas Rising Star Quality Program was voluntary. If a provider wanted to participate and get a star rating, great. But HB 2607 made TRS participation mandatory for any provider accepting state subsidies.
Yes.
If you want to take in low-income children on scholarships, you must jump through the state's quality rating hoops.
And we should acknowledge that the mandate drove massive participation increases. The data shows that in December 2023, 35.3% of subsidized providers were TRS certified.
Okay.
Fast forward just 1 year to December 2024, and that number surges to 55.3%.
That's a big jump.
Huge. They even saw the highest tier, the 4-star programs, extend to 1,779 facilities. This means over 100,000 children are now officially in certified, high-quality environments.
But I want to pull back the curtain on how a small daycare actually achieves that 4-star rating, because it isn't just about being great with kids. The operational toll is staggering.
It really is.
We saw boards spending huge money to keep teachers, but they're also dumping massive resources into managing the sheer bureaucracy of this mandate. The report shows 36% of local boards are heavily investing in a subcategory known by a truly awful acronym.
Oh, no.
TESS PDS SMEs.
Which translates to subject matter experts for the Texas Early Childhood Professional Development System.
Try saying that 3 times fast, right?
Yeah, thank you.
But conceptually, these are basically bureaucratic navigators.
Yeah.
Imagine you run a small daycare out of your home, or like a single-site center in a rural area.
Yeah.
You spend your day managing toddlers, parents, and mealtimes.
You're completely maxed out.
Totally. And suddenly the state mandates that you must log into a complex registry, track highly specific professional development hours for every single employee, upload certificates, and maintain constant administrative compliance just to keep your subsidy funding.
It's overwhelming for a small business.
So the local boards have to hire these TESE PDS SMEs, these navigators, just to hold the hands of providers and keep them from drowning in paperwork.
When you mandate an entire ecosystem of thousands of independent businesses to standardize their reporting practically overnight, you invariably create an administrative bottleneck.
Yeah.
The system requires an entirely new workforce just to maintain the rules of the system.
And the money to hire those navigators has to come from somewhere. The report shows that while spending on these administrative experts and retention bonuses surged, spending in foundational categories like health and safety and evaluation and assessment actually saw slight declines. My favorite analogy for this is think of a restaurant owner who desperately wants a Michelin star.
Okay.
They spend all their capital hiring specialized accountants and consultants to prove to the reviewers they deserve the star. But to afford the consultants, they stop paying the exterminator and the health inspector.
This raises an important question, and it's a critical vulnerability the report flags for monitoring. Has the frantic state-mandated push for TRS paperwork compliance genuinely started to eclipse basic operational standards?
Right. Are we just trading one problem for another?
Exactly. Our local boards, assuming health and safety, are just naturally covered by baseline licensing, allowing them to divert funds to the bureaucracy. The strategic focus of the boards has temporarily shifted from organically encouraging quality to basically operationalizing the paperwork of quality.
So what does this all mean? We have a system leaking 75,000 seats. We have federal quality dollars pivoting to emergency wage triage. And we have an administrative mandate creating massive bureaucratic overhead.
It's a perfect storm.
Knowing all of this, what does the Children at Risk report actually recommend to fix the foundation? Because they offer 3 major recommendations for the Texas legislature to consider before their next session.
The first directly addresses the workforce triage we've been talking about. The report recommends formalizing wage floors.
Meaning we stop relying on random one-off retention bonuses to keep people from quitting.
Exactly. The goal is to build a structured, predictable compensation ladder. Instead of a surprise bonus every 8 months, a provider receives multi-year retention stipends based on their certification levels and years of service.
That makes sense.
If you want early childhood educators to stay, you have to build an income floor that competes directly with K-12 public school salaries. Predictability stabilizes the workforce far better than sporadic triage.
Okay, so the second recommendation focuses on expanding direct care access. We mentioned earlier that the $100 million legislative injection basically just paid the inflated rent for the current number of kids.
Right. It just maintained the status quo.
The report insists the state must infuse significant sustainable dollars to explicitly eliminate that 90,000 plus wait list. Like not just maintaining, but aggressively expanding capacity so families aren't economically paralyzed while sitting in a queue.
And the third recommendation is highly technical, but arguably the most economically vital. It involves stabilizing provider reimbursement rates by eliminating the published rate trap.
Oh, this part is wild.
We need to walk through how this mechanism currently works because it actively punishes the exact providers trying to serve low-income communities.
Okay, walk me through a hypothetical here. Let's say I run a really high-quality daycare in a neighborhood we know is a designated childcare desert.
Okay, so let's say your actual cost to provide that high-quality TR-certified care is $300 a week per child.
Okay.
But you know the families in your specific neighborhood simply cannot afford $300. So to ensure the local community can still access your center, you heavily discount your services and set your official, quote-unquote, published rate at $150 a week.
So I'm taking a hit, but I'm doing it to try and serve the neighborhood.
Exactly. But then a family comes to you with a state subsidy voucher. When the state calculates how much to reimburse you for that child, they look at your published rate of $150.
Right.
Even though the state knows the actual market cost of TRS-certified care in your region is $300, they are legally bound to reimburse you at your lower published rate.
That is just incredible. So by trying to keep my doors open to families who can't afford the real cost, I'm legally trapping myself into receiving half the state reimbursement I actually need to run the program.
Yes, you're subsidizing the state's gap out of your own operational budget. And that is why providers in low-income areas bleed money and eventually close, which directly creates these childcare deserts.
That is completely backward.
It is. The report recommends mandating that reimbursements be paid at the TWC-established regional market rate, regardless of the provider's artificially discounted published rate. This simple rule change would immediately inject financial solvency back into low-income area providers.
I used a leaky boat analogy earlier, but looking at these three recommendations, wage floors, real expansion of access, and fixing that reimbursement trap, it's more like driving on a highway. Right now, local boards are essentially patching a blown tire with duct tape while driving at 60 miles an hour. That's the retention bonuses and the published rate trap. But what the report is saying is we actually need to pull over and just buy a new set of tires that are rated for the speed we need to drive.
I like that. You can't just keep duct taping it and expect to get to your destination safely.
Exactly. If the tires fail, the whole car crashes. And, if you're listening to this and you don't have kids or your kids are already grown, you might be wondering why you should even care about the mechanics of the TWC or reimbursement rates.
It's a fair question.
It matters because the stability of this specific workforce directly dictates the stability of the entire broader economy. I mean, early childhood educators are literally the workforce behind the workforce.
Think about it. If 88% of working families with young children are living in an area where they mathematically cannot find care, a massive percentage of those parents are just dropping out of the labor market entirely.
Right. And when they drop out, your local businesses can't find staff. Economic growth in your specific city stalls. The tax base shrinks. We completely rely on this invisible infrastructure to function so that the rest of our society can function.
It leads to a much broader question about how we design our local economies. We clearly recognize early childhood education as the first, most crucial step of our economic infrastructure.
Yeah.
Yet the current design expects that infrastructure to be subsidized by the artificially low wages of the people working inside it.
We're demanding a Michelin star product, requiring a mountain of administrative proof to back it up, but relying on an economic model that forces the chefs to work for poverty wages.
It's completely unsustainable.
It makes me wonder how future generations are going to judge us. Like, will they look back at our tolerance for childcare deserts with the same absolute disbelief we now have for historical cities that tried to operate without running water or electricity?
It's a striking comparison.
We wouldn't accept a neighborhood without basic utilities. Yet we just accept that 88% of working families don't have access to the foundational care they need to participate in society. So take a look around your own neighborhood. What is the true cost of quote unquote affordable care in your community? Think back to that small talk about the weather from the audio. We all live under the same sky, but until we fundamentally fix the foundation of this system, whether a child gets to safely play and learn is entirely dependent on the local climate.